Warm-up problems. Number 1. What do the numbers 1 through 100 on a meter stick mean? Those are the centimeters on a traditional stick, and traditionally the ticks are millimeters. Converting 270 centimeters to meters, I realize that the decimal point is at the end there, and the chart has unit, deci, centi, milli. So we are starting at the centi, and we go over 2 spots to the left, and so that's going to be 2.70 meters. When we simplify 4x and 8x, we add the numbers in the front, and the x's stay the same. In this case right here, we can only add like terms. This has an x, that has a y. They don't have common letters, and so you cannot add them together. We can only add the numbers together here. So that's going to be 10 minus 4x plus 3y. This comes into play when we talk about adding measurements. Just like you can only add the variables that are the same, you can only add measurements that are the same. You cannot add 3 centimeters plus 5 inches to get 8 of something. You have to have the exact same unit. And when we add the x terms here together, the x stays the same. So when we add 3 centimeters plus 5 centimeters, we get 8 centimeters. The centimeters doesn't change. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. Number 1, 2, 3, and purpose, relevant, success. Go ahead and read those on your own. Pause the video to read that. For today's grades, don't forget that we have wrap-ups every day. Next quiz is a long time from now. Number 1, location and motion are measured relative to some point called the origin. This can be put anywhere that we want it to be, but often a situation will lead to an obvious, easiest choice. A reference frame, or frame of reference. Is made up of an origin and arrows showing which way is positive. It's basically a number line that's used to solve problems. Another name for this is a coordinate system. It is customary, or in other words, a tradition, to put positive values to the right or above the origin. Okay, here we have our first, almost our first equation. I guess we had an equation for percent error in the previous lesson. But anyway, here we go. Our first real physics equation. This is read as displacement. This is final location. And this is the initial location. That's when we are thinking of the physics concepts behind each of the variables. But as I read this mathematically, I could say that this is delta x equals, obviously, but I'd say x subscript f, or just simply x sub f. And this is the initial location, x subscript I, or in other words, x sub I. So it means displacement. This is the distance and direction moved. This is where it ends up at the end of a certain time, and the location at the beginning of a certain amount of time. Usually we use meters for that, but we can use centimeters, millimeters, kilometers, or we could use in the English system inches, miles, yards. Displacement has two parts, direction and magnitude. There are a lot of things that have direction and magnitude. These things with two such parts are called vectors. Magnitude, when we say direction and magnitude is the size of the movement or the distance traveled. It's the digits without the sign. The direction is shown by the sign. Motion up or to the right is shown by positive displacements. Motion left or down are shown by negative displacements. So we're going to be having story problems where we have to figure out the displacement. The mathematics is not going to be difficult, but figuring out how to put in the numbers, that can be the tricky part. Which number goes where? Do you make them positive? Do you make them negative? Okay, so the general procedure for solving all story problems is going to be the same. I suggest that you first off drawing a picture. Now, some people might end up not using that step, and if your brain works that well, that's fine, go ahead, but I always like to draw a picture. Label pictures with known information. That's the stuff that's given in the story problem. And you really should include a frame of reference that shows where the origin is, where everything is measured from, and which way is positive and negative. Convert units if needed, and change any negatives. So, like I was saying at the warm-up, you can't add 3 centimeters plus 5 inches. You have to have the same units. Change any negatives. When you're given